Okay, so today we're going to be looking at the May 2017 Edexcel Foundation exam paper, and this is just going to be a walkthrough video showing you how to complete each question. So starting with the first page, this is non-calculator, just a reminder. It asks you to work out 2 to the power of 4. So when we have something to the power of 4, that means multiply it by itself 4 times. So it can be easier just to write that out 4 times first. Then 2 times 2, I'll just write is 4. Times that by 2 is 8, and then times that by 2 is going to give you 16 as your answer. Okay, then question 2, we've got a rounding question. So write 7.26451 correct to 3 decimal places. So 3 decimal places, we're looking at the third digit after the decimal point, which is the 4. We're then going to round the 4. So if we look next to it, it has a 5. 5 to 9 means we're going to round up. So we're going to write all the other digits. 7.26, and then the 4 is going to round up to a 5. Question 3, simplify 7 times e times f times 8. So the first thing that we're going to deal with multiplication is we're going to do 7 times 8, which is 56. We've then got e times f. When you're multiplying letters together, you just write them in alphabetical order, so EF. So 56 EF for that one. Okay, now we've got solving an equation. So x over 5 equals 2.5. Now x over 5 means x divided by 5. When we are solving equations, we're trying to get x by itself. The opposite of dividing by 5 is multiplying by 5. So we have to multiply both sides by 5. That gives you x equals. Now another way to think about 2.5 is 2.5. So we've got to do 2.5 times 5. So 2 times 5 is 10, and then 0.5 times 5 is 2.5. So if you add 10 and 2.5 together, you get 12.5. So your answer would be 12.5 for that one. And then the final question on this first page is write 4/5 as a percentage. Now, a percentage is out of 100. So the best thing to do if you're trying to convert a fraction to a percentage is to change the denominator to 100. It's 5 at the moment, so we've got to think about what do we multiply 5 by to turn it into 100. We're going to multiply it by 20. So then we're going to multiply the numerator by 20. 4 multiplied by 20 is 80. So it's 80 out of 100, which is then going to give us 80% as our answer. So that is the first page complete. Okay, question 5 then. 60% of 70. So again, just a reminder, this is non-calculator. So the best thing for us to do is going to be to find 10% first. And to find 10%, you just divide the original number by 10. So that is 7. And then we've got to think, how many 10% do we need to make 60%? We need 6. So we're going to write multiplied by 6. And then 7 multiplied by 6 is 42. So our answer for this one is 42. And then question 6, Sammy spins a fair 4-sided spinner, and you can see it there. It's got A, B, B, and C. On the probability scale, mark with across the probability that the spinner will land on B. So for B, there's 2 out of a possible 4, and it's a fair spinner, which is important. So it's equal chance of landing on each of them. So 2 out of 4 simplifies to a half. So that's going to be our first one. And then on the probability scale, mark with across the probability that the spinner will land on F. There's not an F on the spinner, so that's impossible. So that is 0 for the probability. Okay, question 7. Fahima buys 2 packets of bread rolls costing £1.50 for each packet, 1 bottle of ketchup costing £1.60, 3 packets of sausages. Fahima pays with a £10 note. She gets 30p change. Fahima works out that 1 packet of sausages costs £2.30. Is Fahima right? You must show how you get your answer. So first thing we can do, if there's 30p change from a £10 note, we can work out how much everything costs. So £10 take away 30p is £9.70. So that's our total for everything. Then we've got 2 packets of bread rolls costing £1.50. So we'll work that out. 2 multiplied by 1.5 is £3. And then you've also got 1 bottle of ketchup costing £1.60. So we'll add those together. I'll just put an extra 0.0 next to the 3. So it's easier to add. 0 add 6 is 6. And we can put 0 here because it's money anyway as well. 3 add 1 is 4. So we get £4.60 for the bread rolls and also the ketchup. Then we're going to work out the difference between the total and those because that's going to tell us how much the sausages in total cost. So what we'll do is we'll do £9.70, take away £4.60, 0 take away 0 is 0, 7 take away 6 is 1, and then 9 take away 4 is 5. So the sausages cost £5.10. There's 3 packs of sausages. So we've got 2 options in terms of showing this. We can divide it by 3, or we can do what Fahima said. And Fahima said they're £2.30. If we do 3 multiplied by £2.30, then that's going to give you £6.90, which isn't the same as £5.10. So then we can say Fahima is wrong. So we've just got that proof there with the 510 and the 690. They have to be the same number for it to be correct. Okay, then we've got some fraction work. First one's multiplying fractions together. So 5 over 8 times 3 over 4. So we're going to do 5 times 3 first, which is 15. And then we're going to do 8 times 4, which is 32. It doesn't ask you to simplify, and you can't actually simplify. So answer would just be 15 over 32. Then the second one, we've got subtracting fractions. Now, if you're going to subtract fractions, they need to have the same denominator. At the moment, we've got 3 and 4. So we've got to think, what's the common denominator? 3 and 4. 12 is in the times table for both of those. And then we've got to think, how do we change these so they have 12 on the bottom? The first one has a 3 on the bottom, which means to times it by 4, which means we have to times the 2 by 4 to get 8. The second one has a 4 on the bottom, so we need to multiply by 3 top and bottom. And then 1 times 3 is 3. And now we can subtract them. So if you have 8 twelfths, take away 3 twelfths. 8 take away 3 is 5. Really important you don't subtract the denominators, so it's just 5 twelfths. And that will be our final answer for that one. So 5 twelfths. Okay, next up. Sean works for a company. His normal rate of pay is £12 per hour. When Sean works more than 8 hours a day, he is paid overtime for each hour he works more than 8 hours. Sean's rate of overtime pay per hour is 1.25 times his normal rate of pay per hour. On Monday, Sean worked for 10 hours. Work out the total amount of money Sean earns on Monday. Okay, so his normal pay is £12 an hour. And he gets overtime if he works more than the 8 hours. So first thing we would do is let's work out how much he gets for the normal 8 hours. So 8 times 12. And if you know the times table, it's 96. You might need to do some written workings and lay it out as 12 times 8 if you didn't. Okay, and then 2 times 8 is 16. And then 1 times 8 is 8, add the 1, 9. So you've got 2 ways to work it out. You either know the times table or you can use written multiplication. So that's how much you're going to get for the first 8 hours. We then need to work out the overtime pay, which is 1.25 times the normal rate. So if you work out a quarter of the normal rate, which is £12, that's £3. And then if you add that onto the normal rate, we can work out that he gets paid £15 for the overtime rate. And if he did 10 hours total, 8 hours is like his normal shift, so it's an extra 2 hours. So if we do 2 times 15, so doubling 15, which is 30, that's how much he's going to get paid for the overtime. And then we're going to add them together. So 96 add 30, 6 add 0, 6, 9 add 3 is 12. So he's going to get £126. Okay, question 10. A farmer has 20 boxes of eggs. There are 6 eggs in each box. write as a ratio the number of eggs in 2 boxes to the total number of eggs. So for 2 boxes, you're going to have, there's 6 eggs in each box, but you can also, the total number of eggs is also 20 boxes. So we can do it in terms of boxes actually to make life easier. So 2 boxes, and the total is 20 boxes. And if we simplify that, that would just be 1 to 10 because we can half both of those. Okay, next up we've got the sequences question. So question 11, a sequence of patterns is made from circular tiles and square tiles. Here are the first 3 patterns in the sequence. How many square tiles are needed to make pattern number 6? So if we look at the square tiles, it goes from 1 to 4 to 9. And basically, it's the square of the pattern number. 1 squared is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Pattern number 2, 2 times 2 is 4. Pattern number 3, 3 times 3 is 9. So for pattern number 6, you're going to do 6 times 6. So the answer is going to be 36 for the number of squares. How many circular tiles are needed to make pattern number 20? So let's get the nth term for those. So circular tiles in the first one is 4. Circular tiles in the second one is 8. Circular tiles in the third one is 12. So the nth term for this, it goes up in 4s. So it's 4n. And how do you get from 4 back to 4? It's already there. So it's just 4n for the nth term. So then for pattern number 20, you would do 4 times 20. And that's going to give you 80 for the number of circular tiles. Again, as a final bit to this, Derek says when the pattern number is odd, an odd number of square tiles is needed to make the pattern. And remember, you always times it by itself. So whatever the pattern number is, you times it by itself to work out the number of square tiles. So the answer is yes, because it's always going to be an odd times an odd, which is going to make an odd. For example, the first one was pattern number 1. You do 1 times 1, you get 1, which is odd. The third one is 3. It's 3 times 3. Odd times odd, you get 9, which is also odd. Okay, question 12. So question 12, there are only 7 blue pens, 4 green pens, and 6 red pens in a box. 1 pen is taken at random. Write down the probability that this pen is blue. So straight away, the amount of blue pens is 7. So we know it's going to be 7 out of something. So we can write that as the top of our fraction. And then all we need to do is count up the total. And it's out of 7 add 4 is 11, add 6 is 17. So 7 out of 17 for that one. Estimation question. Next, so the diagram shows a tree and a man. The man is of average height. The tree and the man are drawn to the same scale. Write down an estimate for the real height in meters of the man. So first thing, anything between 1.5 and 2 meters is average for a kind of adult human. So if you put anything between 1.5 and 2 here, you will get the marks. Okay, 2 is going to be the easiest one for us to think about. So I'm just going to put here that my answer is 2, just because we're going to need that for part B. Find an estimate for the real height in meters of the tree. So what we want to do is think about how many of this man have we got to make the tree. So you can roughly count up, and it depends on what you've printed it on. But I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the man. So I would do 5 times 2, which would give me 10 meters for that. And again, if you put a different answer and then you times that by 5, or maybe you thought there were 6 men, that would be fine. Anything between 7.5 and 12 would give you the full mark. So it gives you a range again. It gives you a range again for that. Okay. Question 14. We've got a pie chart now. So question 14, we've got a pie chart. So year 9 students from all school were asked to choose one language to study. The table shows information about their choices. So at the moment, we just have the number of students for French, Spanish, and German. First thing we're going to need to do is actually find out the total number of students in year 9. So we're going to add those all together. And when you add them up, you get 100. Now, the next thing you have to do for a pie chart is you have to work out how many angles represents one person. The way you do this is you do 360 divided by the total. So it's like 360 degrees divided by 120, and that means each person is 3 degrees on our section. They've put a thing here where we can actually just write like the degrees, or we could write angle, and you have to times each of these by 3. And again, non-calculator, so you might need to do some workings for this. And you get 168, 120, and then you get 72. Now, on the pie chart, they've already put your kind of starting line. So for French, we're going to go for 168. So I've put my protractor in the middle. If you've got a 180 protractor, by the way, I'd recommend getting a 361 just to make your life easier. I've got 0 here. Now, if I'm counting around from the right, I need to use the top numbers because that's not 350 between there and there. It's 10. And then I go all the way to 168. So I put a little marker on. I'll just show you that here. So I've just gone from here and I've gone to 168 and I've put a marker on with my pen. Then I'm going to get my ruler. I'm going to start from the center. I'm going to go through that point. And I'm going to go the whole way there. And this is French sorted. And then Spanish is 120. So what I'm going to do now is put my protractor here against that line for 0. And I'm going to count round to 120. And again, put another marker on there. And again, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to join it up through there. And then this is Spanish. And then what you can do to check you've got it right, you can measure that angle and just check it's 72. And then this is German for our final section. But it's worth, you can obviously just chuck your protractor on there and you can measure just to check that you get 72, just to make sure that you've got it right. Okay, then there's a second question from this. So it says, Year 9 students from Lowry School were also asked to choose one language to study. The accurate pie chart shows information about their choices. Shamina says the pie chart shows that French was chosen by more Year 9 students at Lowry School than at Hall School. Is Shamina right? You must explain your answer. Now we can see the French section is bigger, okay? But that just means the proportion is bigger. We don't actually know that the number of students is bigger because we were given no totals for Lowry School. So we have to say we don't know because we don't know the totals at Lowry School. She might be right, but she's only picked it off the highest proportion rather than the highest number of students. So we can't actually complete that with a comment. Okay, next up, question 15, we've got shape questions. So here are a triangle and a rectangle. The area of the rectangle is 6 times the area of the triangle. So straight away, it's an area question. So I'll just underline that. And it's asked us to work out the width of the rectangle. So because it's talked about area, what we're going to do first is work out the area of the triangle, which is half times the base times the height. Okay, you might write it as base times height over 2 as well. It's up to you. So 9 times 8 over 2 is one way you can write it, or you can write a half times 9 times 8. 9 times 8 is 72, and if you half that, you get 36 centimeters squared. So this is for the triangle. Now it says the area of the rectangle is 6 times the area of the triangle. So I'm going to multiply 36 by 6. And you might need to do some workings on the side of your page here for that. So 6 times 6 is 36. 6 times 3 is 18. Add 3, 21. So it's 216. So what that means is the area of the rectangle is 216 centimeters squared. Now to get the area of a rectangle, normally you do the length times width. So 16 times something will get you to 216. So you can write that 16W for width equals 216. And then you've got a couple of options for solving this. What you can do first, just to make your life a little bit easier, is you can think about, is there anything I can divide these by? And what you can do is you can actually divide them by 8. So 8 goes into both, because 16 does go into, but it's going to give you a decimal. So it's easy if you go for 8, because 8 goes exactly into both. So this gives you 2W here, and 216 divided by 8 gives you 27. And then what you can do from there is just divide by 2, and that gives you W equals 13.5. So it just makes it a little bit easier to work it out. The other option you've got is you can use a bus stop, 216 and 16. I'll just show you this because this might be a method that some of you would have done. So 16 into 2 doesn't go. 16 into 21 goes once, remainder 5. And then 16s into 56 goes 3 times, remainder 8. And then 16s into 80 goes 5 times. You might prefer that as a method because it works just like that every time. Just remember to put 0.0 if you have a remainder so that you can keep going and work out the exact answer. Okay, next up we've got substitution. Question 16. V equals U plus AT. U is 1, A is -3, and T is a half. Work out the value of V. So we're going to write all this out. I really like to use brackets when I'm substituting, especially if I'm multiplying anything together or using negatives. So V equals U, U's 1, so by itself I just write 1, plus AT. So actually just writing them in brackets, 1, and then you've got -3 times a half. 3 times a half is 1.5, so -3 times a half is -1.5. So then we're dealing with 1, take away 1.5, the difference is 0.5, but 1.5 is bigger, so it'd be -0.5 for our answer for that. Okay, question 17. Just let that focus. So 5 tins of soup have a total weight of 1,750 grams. 4 tins of soup and 3 packets of soup have a total weight of 1,490 grams. Work out the total weight of 3 tins of soup and 2 packets of soup. So first things first, it's told you that 5 tins of soup have a total weight of 1,750. So we can actually work that out, because if we do 1,750 divided by 5, that will tell us what 1 tin of soup is going to be. So 5 doesn't go into 1, goes into 17 3 times, remainder 2, goes into 25 5 times, and then there's a 0 at the end. So 1 tin is 350 grams. Then we know 4 tins of soup and 3 packets of soup make 1,490. So 4 tins of soup, so 4 times 350, add 3 packets of soup, so I'll just write 3p for that, equals 1,490. So 4 times 350, you can use workings for this, or you can do it in your head. 4 times 300 is 1,200, and then 4 times 50 is 200. So if you add them together, you get 1,400 plus 3p equals 1,490. Then put a line down the middle for our balancing of our equations. We're going to take away 1,400 from both sides because we're trying to get p by itself. So 3p equals 90. Then we're going to divide by 3. So p equals 30. So a packet is 30 grams. And the question said work out the total weight of 3 tins and 2 packets. So 3 times 350 plus 2 times 30. 3 times 350, 3 times 300 is 900. 3 times 50 is 150. So add them together, you get 1,050. 2 times 30 is 60. So then together you get 1,110 grams. Okay, question 18. Bellina has a garden in the shape of a circle of radius 10 meters. He is going to cover the garden with grass seed to make a lawn. Grass seed is sold in boxes. Each box of grass seed will cover 46 meters squared of garden. Bellina wants to cover all the garden with grass seed. Work out an estimate, so that's really important, an estimate for the number of boxes of grass seed Bellina needs. You must show your working. So estimate means we're going to need to do some rounding, and this will often happen in a non-calculator paper. So first thing, we need to do the area, and it's a circle. So it's pi times the radius squared. Now, we know the radius is 10, so we're going to write pi multiplied by 10 squared, which is 10 squared is 10 times 10, so it's 100 pi. Now, the reason why we're estimating is because this is a non-calculator paper. We're not going to be able to use pi on our calculator, so we're going to round pi. And pi to the nearest integer is 3, so to the nearest whole number. That's what I mean when I say integer. And then we've got 100 multiplied by 3, which is 300. So it's 300 meters squared. Now, we're also going to round the box of grass seed will cover, instead of 46, we're going to say one box will cover 50 meters squared. So we're working with nicer numbers. We're going to round that to one significant figure, and 46 rounds to 50. And if we need to cover 300 meters squared, and we have 50 per box, we do 300 divided by 50, divide by 10 first, because they can both divide by 10, 30 over 5, which is 6. So our estimation would be 6 boxes. Is your estimate for part A an underestimate or an overestimate? And we think about the way we rounded things here. It's an underestimate because we rounded pi down. So the actual area would be greater because we used 3 instead of 3.14. So the area would be greater. Also, we rounded how much a box would cover up. So we went from 46 to 50. So the area would be greater than 300. The box only covers 46 rather than 50 meters squared. So we have to think about both parts of the rounding that we did. Okay, next up, solving an equation. 19a, solve 4 and then x minus 5 in a bracket equals 18. First thing to do with this type of question is expand the bracket. So 4 multiplied by x is 4x, and then 4 multiplied by negative 5. Positive times a negative makes a negative, so it's negative 20. That equals 18. Solving this, trying to get x by itself, the opposite or inverse of taking away 20 is adding 20. So 4x equals 38. Then we're going to divide by 4. So x equals, I'll write as 38 over 4. The reason is we don't have a calculator and 38 doesn't divide by 4 exactly. Simplify this first. They both divide by 2. So I can change it to 19 over 2. And I can just write that as an answer. Or you can change it to a decimal if you want. But there's a risk that you might get that wrong. So actually just writing as a fraction is absolutely fine for that. Okay, then we have a part B, which is an inequality question. So t is an integer. So remember that means it's a whole number. And then we've got, write down all the possible values of t. So it says t is greater than negative 3 and less than or equal to 2. So negative 2 would be the first one, negative 1, 0, 1, and 2 can be 1. Because of the line underneath, that tells us that it can actually be equal to 2 as well. Okay, question 20. Asmal is paid £1,500 per month. He is going to get a 3% increase in the amount of money he is paid. Work out how much money Asmal will be paid per month after the increase. So first of all, we need 3% of what he normally earns. We'll get 1% first. And I'll just write a reminder here. To get 1%, you're dividing by 100. So 1,500 divided by 100 is £15. Then we can get 3% easily from 1% by timesing it by 3. 15 times 3 is £45. So then all we have to do is an increase. We just have to do 1,500, add 45. So his new pay is going to be £1,545. Okay, we've got a scatter graph question next. So the scatter graph shows the maximum temperature and the number of hours of sunshine in 14 British towns on one day. One of the points is an outlier. Write down the coordinates of this point. So an outlier is one that doesn't follow the general trend of the other points. You can see these are all nearly in a straight line, and then there's this point over here that is not. If we look at the coordinates for it, the x coordinate's halfway between 9 and 11. So I'm going to put 10 here for that. And then the y coordinate is halfway between, you can see between 18 and 20. So it's going to be 19 there. So coordinates are going to be 10 and 19. For all the other points, write down the type of correlation. So they all follow a straight line going from the bottom up to the right. So that is a positive correlation. So it's a positive correlation. If they were kind of scattered, there'd be no correlation. If they were going from here downwards to here, so where my pen is now, that would be a negative correlation. Okay, then there's a second part to this. So it says, on the same day in another British town, the maximum temperature was 16.4 degrees. Estimate the number of hours of sunshine in the town on this day. So what we have to do for this is we have to go back to our scatter graph and we have to draw a line of best fit, which is roughly going to go through as many of these points, or in the middle, sorry, of these points as possible. So something like that. And then it said the maximum temperature was 16.4. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to have to go to 16.4, which each of these is 0.2. So 16.4 is going to be there. I'm going to draw a line across, and then I'm going to draw a line down to number of hours of sunshine. And if I'm estimating that, this goes up in, again, 0.2. So it's going to be 12.8 hours. A weatherman says temperatures are higher on days when there is more sunshine. Does the scatter graph support what the weatherman says? And then it says give a reason for your answer. And we can see, because there's a positive correlation, we can say we do agree. We can say yes, as the number of hours of sunshine increases, the temperature increases. So we're just linking it with the context of the question. So we're mentioning about the sunshine and the temperature. Okay, nice. Right, question 22. Express 56 as a product of its prime factors. 56, the first prime factor, if it's an even number, we take 2 out, circle it because it's prime. 2 times 28 makes 56. 2 also goes into 28, 14 times. 2 also goes into 14, 7 times. 7 is a prime number. We've got 3 2's, so 2 cubed and 1 7. 2 cubed times 7. Next up, multiplying decimals. Okay, the best thing to do for this is to change them to whole numbers first. So instead of 54.6, we're going to multiply by 10. Just focus that. And we're going to change it to 546. And then we're going to multiply 4.3 by 10 as well and change that to 43. We're then going to work this out. There's a couple of ways you can do it. You might use a grid method. You might use long multiplication using column addition. Column multiplication. So 546 times 43. And we're going to multiply. So we've got 3 times 6 first, which is 18. Then we've got 3 times 4, which is 12. Add the 1, 13. 3 times 5 is 15. Add the 1, 16. And then we'll put our placeholder in because we're going to use the 4 now. And the 4 isn't a 4, it's a 40. 4 times 6 is 24. 4 times 4 is 16. Add the 2 is 18. And then 4 times 5 is 20. Add the 1 is 21. Then we're going to add all this together. So we get 8, 7, 6 add 8, 14, 3, 2. So we get 23,478. But we times by 10 twice at the start. So we have to divide this by 10 twice at the end, or you can think about just dividing by 100. So our answer would be 234.78. So that's why I wrote it at the start, just to remind myself what I needed to then reverse at the end and divide by. Okay, question 24. So we've got a square here. It's been split into 4 parts, and it says the area of square ABCD is 10. Show that x squared plus 6x equals 1. So it's been split into 4 parts for a reason. So let's find the area of each of those parts. The first thing is 3 times 3. That's a square. So that's 9. This is a 3 here, and this is x, so this is 3x. This is also a 3 here, so this is 3x as well for the rectangles. And then this would be x times x here, which is x squared. So if we add up those 4 sections, we get 10, because it told us the total area of the square is 10. So then we're going to simplify this to x squared plus 6x plus 9. And then all we have to do is look at this and look at what we're trying to get to. And we just want x squared plus 6x on the left. So we're going to take away 9 from both sides. And that will leave us with x squared plus 6x equals 1, which is what they wanted. Question 25. This rectangular frame is made from 5 straight pieces of metal. The weight of the metal is 1.5 kilograms per meter. Work out the total weight of the metal in the frame. So what we need to do is we need to actually get all of the lengths. So the rectangle, so I know this is 5 as well, and I know this is 12, but we also need to get this diagonal one here, which is actually the hypotenuse of a right angle triangle. So we're going to use Pythagoras, which is given during the formula sheet. A squared plus b squared equals c squared, and c is always opposite the right angle, so it's the longest side. So we have 12 and 5, so we can write 5 squared plus 12 squared. Let's call the other one x squared because we don't know it. 5 squared is 25 because 5 times 5. 12 times 12 is 144 equals x squared. Then we're going to add these together. 169 equals x squared. To get x by itself, we have to square root both sides. The square root of 169 is 13, because 13 times 13 makes 169, and the square root of x squared is x. So we know that's 13 now. Then we have to add them all together. 5 add 5, add 12, add 12, add 13, and you get 47 meters. So it's 47 meters worth of metal, and it told us the weight of the metal is 1.5 kilograms per meter times 1.5. The best way to do that is times it by 15 first, and then we're going to divide by 10 after. So 5 times 7 is 35, and then 5 times 4 is 20. Add the 3, 235. Add the placeholder, then we get 4 and 7. Then you get 5. 3 add 7 is 10. And then you get 7. So you get 705, but we changed it by timesing by 10, so to divide by 10. So our answer is going to be 70.5 kilograms. Okay, next up. Equation of line L1 is y equals 3x minus 2. The equation of the line L2 is 3y minus 9x plus 5 equals 0. Show that these two lines are parallel. So when it says parallel, that means that they have the same gradient. And normally when we want to find the gradient, we want things written in the form y equals mx plus c, and m is the gradient. The first one is written like that. Straight away, we can see y equals 3x minus 2. 3 is the gradient of that one. It's the second one that we need to rearrange. So at the moment, we've got 3y minus 9x plus 5 equals 0. We want to get y by itself. So I'm going to keep the 3y on this side. And what I'm going to do is going to add 9x to both sides because it says take away 9x here. It also says add 5. So I'm going to take away 5 from both sides as well. So we'd end up with 3y equals 9x subtract 5. Then we're trying to get y by itself. So I'm going to divide by 3, divide by 3. 9x divided by 3 is 3x. 5 divided by 3 is 5 over 3. Because it's non-calculator, I'm not going to try and write that as a decimal, just going to write it like that. Now, if we look, you've got 3x here and you've got 3x here. So you can say both have a gradient of 3, and that's the proof sorted for that. Okay, and the final question of this paper, question 27, is to do with vectors. So ABCD is a parallelogram. The diagonals of the parallelogram intersect at O. OA equals A and O to B equals B. Find in terms of B the vector from D to B. So first thing we're going to do, vectors, if they're the same length and in the same direction, they're the same. So that's also B to get from D to O because it's the same as O to B. This is also A here to get from C to O because it's the same as O to A. Now the question said we're going to go from D to B. So that's this here. D to B, and it's B twice. So it's B add B, in other words, 2B for that one. Find in terms of A and B the vector A to B. So if you're trying to get from A to B, we can't go straight across the top because we don't know any vectors for that. So what we have to do is think of a different route. And I'm going to go to O, and then I'm going to go to B. Now to get from A to O, you have to go against the arrow for A. So that's going to be negative A. So if you ever go against a vector, it becomes negative. Then I'm at O now, and I want to go to B. Well, that's just following B, so that's fine. So it's basically subtract A, because we're going against the motion of A, the direction of A, and then add B, because we want to follow B along. And then the final question, find in terms of A and B the vector A to D. So A to D, I can't go straight down here because we don't know the vector. So we're going to go to O first, which is going to be minus A. And then to get from O to D, we're going against B as well. So it's going to be minus A or negative A, and then subtract B to finish it off. So that's the end of the paper. Hope you found it useful. I'm going to be making a lot more of these over the next few months. So it'd be really helpful if you guys, if you liked it, you found it helpful, leave a comment. And also if you could subscribe, that would really help me out. Have a great day.